Hi, this is Josh with SKAA. In this video, I'm going to show you step-by-step how to set up a mobile DJ rig that you can take to any gig, anywhere, even if you don't have power at the venue or if the gig is in a remote outdoor location. For this video, we'll be using Soundboks 4 speakers along with the Dillinger Labs Death from Below subwoofers. So we'll be putting together a completely wireless DJ rig. There will be a few short patch cables involved, but there are no long cable runs for signal or for power. With this setup, you'll never have to bring a big box of cables or gaffer tape to your gig ever again. You don't have to worry about people tripping over your equipment. You don't need a power source nearby because everything is battery powered. And best of all, this makes setup and teardown super easy, not only because you have less gear to bring to the gig, but also because all of the devices in this setup will automatically bond to your transmitters and can be saved for later. So when you set up for your next gig, your configuration will be immediately recalled the moment you turn on your SKAA transmitters and SKAA receivers. First, let's talk about what you'll need. For this setup, I'll use 2 Soundboks for the mains, 2 Dillinger Labs Death from Below SKAA Pro subwoofers, although alternatively, you could use just a single Death from Below, 2 speaker stands or speaker poles, depending on your setup. For this setup, I'll be using 2 DFB subs with Soundboks mounted on top, so I'll use 2 speaker poles, 1 for each. 2 Dillinger Labs Dani wireless transmitters, although there is a configuration that only uses one of these that I'll demonstrate later in the video. A pair of headphones, these can be SKAA wireless headphones like the Dillinger Labs Helix or your own favorite wired headphones, depending on what configuration you use. For my base setup, I'm going to be using wired headphones, but I'll demonstrate how to integrate wireless headphones into your setup later in the video as well. You also need to consider what device you are using to output audio. In my case, I'm using a Roland DJ202 DJ controller, and this is bus powered over USB, so I can get power from my MacBook, which is running the Serato software. The DJ202 has unbalanced stereo RCA outputs, so I'll use an RCA to 1/4 inch TS cable, which you can find at skaastore.com, to route audio to the transmitters. You could also substitute a standard RCA cable and some 1/4 inch adapters, or if your deck has balanced 1/4 inch outputs, or you're routing audio from an audio interface, you can just use 2 TRS cables. And because I'm using a setup with 2 Danis, I'll also need a couple of short TRS patch cables. Because SKAA is such a flexible wireless audio standard, there are many different configurations and applications for this, including using a Pro DJ turntable deck setup, a DJ controller like what I'm doing, or in a pinch, you could have a deckless setup with just a laptop and a Dani transmitter feeding over the headphone output from the laptop. This is a great compromise if you have a wedding or other event where you just need to play music but don't necessarily need a DJ. This can also be used for live electronic music performance. So if you're running Ableton Live or Logic Pro with some MIDI controllers, you just need a small audio interface with analog outputs and a couple of extra TRS patch cables to get audio from your interface to the Danis. Step 1, get the DJ deck and computer set up. The DJ202 goes straight into my MacBook over USB. I'll connect my wired headphones directly to my DJ controller for monitoring. And I'll start by playing a test track on loop in Serato. If you're using your own mixer on the table as well, the Dani transmitters we'll talk about in the next step can accept audio from the DJ deck directly or from a mixer. If the device has analog audio outputs, you can connect it to a Dani transmitter. Step 2, get the transmitters set up. For my base setup, I'm going to be running 2 Danis that are daisy-chained together. The first Dani will be bonded to the 2 Soundboks mains, and the second Dani will be bonded to the 2 DFB subs. It helps to label the Danis as well so you don't get them mixed up at a future gig. I'll connect the RCA outs from the DJ202 to my first Dani. I'll plug these into inputs 1 and 2 on the Dani. Because I'm using unbalanced RCA to TS lines, I'll flip the level switch to -10. But if you're using balanced TRS connectors, you'd use the +4 option for pro audio line level. I'll also make sure the pad for each channel is off by putting the switch in the center position. Then I'll grab my second Dani, and like I said before, we're going to daisy chain these together. So I'll take my two TRS patch cables and connect the through outputs on the first Dani to the inputs on the second Dani. It's also best to give the Danis about 3 feet of space to avoid any Dani to Dani interference. And for the best results, it's recommended to place the Danis high up off the ground, directly in line of sight to the receivers, with the antennas perpendicular to the ground. Because the throughs pass the same signal through from your input, you'll want to make sure the second Dani's level is set to the same as the first. So in my case, I'll set this to -10. I'll go ahead and turn on both Danis by pressing this button here. You can also tap the power button to see your battery life. Check the power button LED to see what mode you're in. If it's green, you're in standard SKAA mode. If it's red, you're in SKAA Pro mode. To switch the mode, click the power button 3 times to switch back and forth between SKAA and SKAA Pro mode. For this setup, you'll want the LED to be red for SKAA Pro mode. And I'll make these wide open for now by pulling the volume on both transmitters all the way up. Step 3, set up and configure the main speakers. I'll use my speaker poles to connect each of the Soundboks 4 to each of the DFBs. Or if you're using 2 Soundboks and 1 DFB, you could put the Soundboks on speaker stands. We're going to bond the Soundboks to the first Dani transmitter, so I'll turn off the second Dani just to make sure I'm getting the correct transmitter. I'll turn on my first Soundboks and set it to join mode. What most likely will happen is the speaker will automatically bond to the Dani and start playing music. If not, double-click the bond button on the back of the Soundboks to explore for a transmitter. Once you're bonded to the transmitter, press and hold the bond button for a few seconds to save the Dani to the speaker's green list. The green list is essentially a favorites list, so while in green mode, the Soundboks will always stay bonded to the first Dani. This makes subsequent setups super quick and easy because once you set up your green list on each receiver, they will always remember their bonded transmitter for later. This also acts as a lockout so that your speakers cannot be hijacked by some other nefarious SKAA user at your gig. Next, I'll go to the second Soundboks and just repeat that same process. Turn on the speaker, put it in join mode, bond to the Dani, and press and hold the bond button for a few seconds to save to the green list. Now I have both Soundboks receiving audio from this first Dani transmitter. With normal SKAA transmitters, you can bond up to 4 receivers to any single transmitter with 36 milliseconds of fixed latency. With a SKAA Pro transmitter like Dani, you get the added benefit of lower latency at 19 milliseconds. But the trade-off is you can bond 2 receivers instead of 4, which is why we're daisy chaining the 2 Danis. Although I will show you an alternative setup later that only requires 1 Dani. Another consideration is whether you want to run your mains in mono or in stereo. By default, Soundboks run in mono, so the left and right channels are summed together, which in most cases might be what you want. However, if you want to separate the channels and have one speaker playing the left channel and the other speaker playing the right channel, you can use the SKAA Command app along with any SKAA mini transmitter to set the format of each speaker. So before you even go to the gig, download the SKAA Command app on your phone or tablet, grab the appropriate SKAA mini transmitter for your device, and bond the speakers to that transmitter. Then open the SKAA Command app, and you can click here to select one of 3 formats: left only, right only, or summed mono. I'm gonna stay in mono for my setup, so I'll select mono for both speakers. And the speakers will remember their format unless you change it or perform a factory reset. Alternatively, if you do not have a SKAA mini transmitter, you can also use the Soundboks app to do this over Bluetooth. Temporarily switch the Soundboks over to solo mode, open the Soundboks app and connect. Then click on the dance floor button and you can switch between left, right, or mono. Just make sure that when you're done to switch the Soundboks back to join mode for use with Dani again. If you want your entire setup to be in stereo, another alternative that doesn't require you to use any apps is you can use one Dani for the left channel with one Soundboks and one DFB, and another Dani for the right channel with one more Soundboks and one more DFB. This method doesn't require daisy chaining the Danis and separates the left and right channels, although you do lose the ability to trim the volume of the mains and subs independently. Step 4, set up and configure the subwoofers. I'll start by turning on the second Dani, which I'm going to use to bond to both Death from Below subs. Press the power button here to turn on the first DFB, and just like with the Soundboks, the sub should automatically bond to the Dani. If not, you can double-click the bond button to explore. Once bonded, you can press and hold the bond button to add Dani to the DFB's green list. I'll repeat this process on the second DFB as well. Now that I have music playing from all 4 receivers, let me show you how to configure the DFBs for your particular setup. To check battery life on the DFBs, tap the power button once to see how much power you have left on the LED stack. The power button and LED stack also allow you to select one of 6 EQ presets on the DFB, each with different filters for different applications. Quickly double tap the power button to enter EQ select mode. Turn the volume knob while watching the LED stack to rotate through DFB's 6 EQ presets. 0 or no LED is the bottom setting. This is great for the studio when you really need to hear what's happening all the way down to 20 Hz. 1 is the tight setting. This is great for all genres of music that are not particularly bass heavy, like rock, country, folk, and classical. 2 is the punch setting. This is great for bass-heavy genres like pop, EDM, and other electronic music. 3 is a Soundboks setting that is the perfect complement when using the DFB with Soundboks. 4 is an outdoor setting that starts with a high-pass filter at 45 Hz, so you don't have to waste battery life on sub-low frequencies that will just be lost in most outdoor settings. And 5 is a wide setting with a low-pass filter at 180 Hz. This is helpful when your top speakers need a little more help with the mid-low end. If you're interested in the specifics for each of the EQ modes, I'll link to the DFB manual below where you can check out the exact specifications of each filter. I'm going to go ahead and set this to the Soundboks mode for both of my DFBs. You can either single tap the power button to exit EQ mode or wait 10 seconds. Next, let's talk about audio routing to the subs. If you tap the power button 4 times, this will enter audio routing mode, which gives you access to 3 routing options. With the LED set to 2, this is mono, so this sums both the left and the right channels together. With the LED set to 3, this is SKAA channel 2, which is the right channel. And with the LED set to 4, this is SKAA channel 1, which is the left channel. In most cases, especially if you're only using one sub, you'll want to keep this on mono. Generally speaking, you want your bass to be in mono for live performance situations. So I'll set both DFBs to mono. Just like the EQ mode, you can single tap the power button to exit audio routing mode or wait 10 seconds. One final consideration is time alignment of your subs. Each DFB has 5 time alignment settings that can be used to delay the signal by a number of milliseconds or flip the phase of the sub completely. Tap the power button 5 times to enter time align mode. With the LED off, there is no time align setting. With the LED on 1, this is a 180-degree phase flip, so this inverts the output signal. With the LED on 2, this adds a 2 millisecond delay. With the LED on 3, this adds a 4 millisecond delay. With the LED on 4, this adds a 7 millisecond delay. And with the LED on 5, this adds an 11 millisecond delay. The setting you use here is going to depend highly on the venue you're in and what your top speakers are, as well as the placement of the DFB in relation to your mains. So trust your ears and experiment with different settings and find the one that sounds best in the venue. However, I can give you some general guidelines to follow. If you're using a Soundboks Generation 3 on a pole mounted on the DFB, try settings 1, 2, or 3. If you're using a Soundboks Go on a pole, try using settings 2 or 3. And if you're using a Soundboks Gen 4 on a pole like me, try settings 4 or 5. I'm gonna go with setting 5 to make sure I get the transients in the music out in front of the bass. And once again, I can single tap to exit or wait 10 seconds. Now the only thing left to do is set your levels on each of the speakers and play the gig. The magic of doing all of this with SKAA is that most of this setup can be done before the gig at your home or at your studio, and most of this setup only needs to be done once. So configuring the main speakers, saving to their green lists, configuring the subs and saving to their green lists can all be done in advance of the gig and can be done just one time. When you get to the gig and power on your transmitters and receivers, all of the receivers will automatically bond to the correct Dani transmitter. All of the settings, including the audio routing, EQ modes, and time alignment will also be saved. This gives you more time to focus on your set and spend less time worrying about your setup and teardown. With SKAA, you can have a completely wireless mobile DJ rig set up in minutes with no power requirements and no cable runs, allowing you to gig virtually anywhere. If for some reason you need to perform a factory reset and start from scratch on a receiver, you can press the bond button 6 times and you'll see the bond indicator flash in red. This will clear your green list and go back to factory settings. This process is the same for any SKAA receiver. The range of this setup can reach up to 50 meters, so if you need to space out your speakers or place them in different locations around a venue, you can totally do that. And if you need more speakers than just 2 mains and 2 subs, you just add more Dani transmitters. Each one will get you an additional 2 receivers in SKAA Pro mode. And if your concern is battery life, the Dani will run for 14 hours continuously on a full charge. The Soundboks 4 and Death from Below will give you up to 40 hours on a full charge, although the volume at which you play your music is going to be a factor here as well. I want to end this video with some alternative setups because I realize that not everyone's needs are going to be the same. Whether it's an equipment limitation or a budget limitation, SKAA is flexible enough to accommodate any of your wireless audio needs. One consideration might be that you only have 1 Dani transmitter, but you want to use 4 receivers. I mentioned earlier that in SKAA Pro mode, you can bond up to 2 receivers to any transmitter with 19 milliseconds of fixed latency. If you put Dani in standard SKAA mode, this gives you the option to have 4 receivers with 36 milliseconds of fixed latency. With your Dani in SKAA mode, you can bond both Soundboks and both DFBs to this single transmitter. And you're gonna be monitoring on your headphones wired into your DJ deck anyway, so you don't really have to worry about that latency. You're more or less paying attention to the mix in your headphones anyway. Or add a second Dani in SKAA Pro mode for low latency monitoring on wireless headphones, and then just continue to run the rest of the speakers off of the first Dani in standard SKAA mode. The process of bonding is exactly the same as the speakers. Just turn on the headphones and they should automatically bond to the Dani. If not, double-click the bond button to explore for a new transmitter. Once bonded, press and hold the bond button for a few seconds to save the Dani to its green list. If you do a lot of tricky transitions and effects that require really precise timing, you'll definitely want to operate in SKAA Pro mode if you're using wireless headphones. This will minimize the latency buffer you hear between the deck output and the headphones to only 19 milliseconds. The setup will be identical to the bass setup I demonstrated in this video. You'll just be substituting 1 DFB for 1 pair of Helix headphones. Or add a third Dani for your Helix and keep your second DFB. This will also give you room for 1 more speaker if you like. If you're a gigging DJ or electronic musician, you might already have your own wired speakers that you prefer, and that's totally cool. However, you can actually upgrade your existing system with SKAA. So in addition to the Dani transmitter, Dillinger Labs also makes a SKAA Pro receiver called StreetHeart. StreetHeart can receive audio from any SKAA transmitter and has 4 balanced analog outputs, So you could use just one street heart to feed 4 powered speakers or 4 amplifier channels. And because you can use 2 receivers in SKAA Pro mode or 4 in SKAA mode, this leaves a lot of room for expansion and experimentation. For example, if you had 6 mains and 2 subs, you could mount one street heart directly to a speaker and then run TRS cables over to 2 of your mains and 1 sub on that side of the venue. We'll say that's the left side of the venue. And then on the right side of the venue, you mirror that same setup with a second street heart, 1 sub, and 3 mains. So now you're feeding 8 speakers wirelessly with 1 Dani transmitter and 2 street heart receivers in SKAA Pro mode. This is especially helpful if your performing area or stage is far away from the speakers. This means no cable runs from the stage, and while you'll still have to run cables for the speakers from the 2 street hearts, the cable runs will have a much smaller footprint in the venue. Or if you want to go crazy, you can get 2 Danis and 4 street hearts, or 4 Danis and 8 street hearts, and mount street hearts directly to each speaker in your system, which will effectively convert your wired system into a wireless system. The great thing about SKAA, in addition to extremely high quality wireless audio, is its flexibility. If you have virtually any wireless audio problem, SKAA has a solution that you can design and build yourself. If you're interested in checking out the wide variety of SKAA products available, head over to SKAA.com or SKAAstore.com. And if you like what you see, subscribe to the YouTube channel to see more content like this and to stay up to date on all new SKAA products. Thanks for watching.